Discover your inner goddess and live up to your highest value and most abundant potential. Welcome to Grateful Goddesses, a podcast that empowers you to unleash your inner goddess and take the leap of faith to live your best life. Your guide, Pulver, joins her fellow goddesses in soulful conversations about gratitude, personal growth, authentic living, and a bevy of topics affecting women today. Let's start the show with your host, Pulver.
Welcome everyone to Grateful Goddesses. And we are still going through COVID. So many of our children, our young adults are still in remote learning. In fact, one of my daughters who was away at college and came home for a little bit because of COVID and the lockdown and what was going on, has now been informed that she has to leave her dorm and cannot return back right now. So we have to figure out what to do. So I have two young adult children in my home learning remotely. And needless to say, can be a little challenging. In fact, I brought along my Do Not Disturb podcast in session, which I normally hang on my door, but it's my way of saying, please don't bother me. Even though my children are older, they can knock on the door because they want to use this room or get their forgotten charger. And it's just kind of, everything's a little crazy. So trying to manage that, trying to manage your own feelings about everything that's going on in our world right now can be quite challenging. Our guest today is Lisa Herold, is a certified positive discipline trainer and empowering people in the workplace facilitator who provides leadership, training, and consultation to schools, homes, and businesses. Over the past 25 years, she has taught at the primary, intermediate, and middle school levels in both public and private settings. Lisa serves as Director of Parent Engagement and Positive Discipline at a school in Chicago, where she is a member of the leadership team. Thank you for joining us, Lisa, to Grateful Goddesses.
Thank you. Now we are here. I'm honored to be here. Thank you for having me.
So I mentioned, Lisa, that you are the Director of Parent Engagement and Positive Discipline. Can you elaborate a bit more about that position, please?
Sure. So this position is very unique. I've been working at the school for many years, and when people ask me what I do, it was actually difficult to say because there were so many things that went into this position. Really what it is, it's teaching social emotional skills for parents, teaching parents, so parent workshops, teaching or leading faculty professional development. And then the other thing that I do is a lot of coaching for parents and teachers. When something comes up, a discipline or something's happening in a classroom, I'm able to coach with them and help them through their challenges.
And that's at a school here in Chicago.
Yes.
And so your role, your job has changed somewhat back in March, right? Because of the pandemic.
Yes.
Can you tell us how and walk us through a little bit about those changes and how you pivoted?
Sure. So it was difficult for everyone. It was especially difficult for me because everything that I do is within the school building. It's, a thriving environment. Things are moving, running around all day. And all of a sudden, everyone was home. I was trying to help parents and trying to reach out to see what they needed. And what I learned at the time was that they didn't have the capacity to come to a workshop. We wanted to talk about remote learning, what would be helpful. And they were so overwhelmed that they didn't have the space for that in their day or in their mind, or honestly, just emotionally. So what I started to do was call families and just talk with them individually. And I learned a lot about what was happening at home and what the struggles were. I was able to help in that way, but obviously a big loss for everyone. I mean, just such a big change. Now people are more interested and they have the need. We're going to be doing this for a while, on and off, even if your school is in person. There are times when we're off or remote learning for a period of time. So just like everyone else, just being flexible and taking things as they come one day at a time. It's really all we can do right now.
You're an educator yourself, you taught primary, middle school, and upper school as well, intermediate, correct?
Up to
Yes.
middle school, yes.
Oh, middle school. And so how did you shift to do the job that you're doing currently?
My last position teaching, I was teaching Spanish in an elementary school, and I was teaching pre-kindergarten through 8th grade Spanish. It was a lot of students, very vibrant. What happened was that I started to notice I had something with the younger children that I would say, the way that we started our class was, ¿Cómo estás? And they would tell me everything that was happening. You know, my mom's on a business trip and my dad is home. And I started to listen to their stories. Also, just being a parent myself, I became aware of the stress that people were under and the pressure and everything that was happening. I mean, and that was during a time when we weren't having big problems in the world, just the pressure that was put on everyone. And I was struggling with that a little bit. Tend to try and problem solve, but I didn't quite know what to do with it. So I was invited to go to a positive discipline in the classroom training. And for me, that put everything together. I was able to, it just was the epiphany that this is what we need to do in order to come together, solve our problems together, and learn from one another. So I started teaching parent workshops at that school, and then just started to branch out into other schools and work more with parents and teachers.
And what does positive discipline mean to people who are watching and listening? Because I know in my class, I teach preschool right now. I do a lot of reinforcement, positive, and reinforcement, encouragement. Always not looking at what they've done wrong, but looking at what they've done right. Is that basically what you teach parents?
Yes, encouragement is a major component of positive discipline. It has to do with encouragement, community, the strength that we have in a community, and building the community, and that all learning happens through relationship, which, as you know, you teach young children. That is really, we can't be learning if we're not in a relationship and we don't feel safe. So that encouragement, community, learning from our mistakes.
And then getting back to COVID, when parents, I know as a parent myself, my kids were so easy to pick up on my emotions. If I was having a bad day or something. Like now we look back and we're like, oh, I wish I just had a spilled coffee or something. Now there's like such greater challenges that we're all going through, and we're trying to put on this happy face. It's like that commercial with the like happy face, to your kids. How do you juggle that? How do you teach parents to do that? Is it about being truthful and saying, I don't know if this is going to end or how long this is going to be, or is it about putting on that smiley face?
I think we need to be really honest about our feelings and our emotions. We need to be in touch with our feelings and our emotions, because even if we have that smiley face, children know, and they know and they sense, it's not real. So I believe we need to, first of all, be in touch with our own emotions and learn, just quite honestly, what are we feeling? I'm just learning that now as an adult. I didn't know in the past even how I was feeling. I would just act a certain way, or, we just keep going and we do all of these things because we're strong. But it's very important to be aware of our feelings, experience our feelings, move through them, and then be able to regulate. Then that's teaching the children that they will have feelings. Then we are able to help them, validate their feelings, help them regulate. And if we don't do that, we succumb to burnout and we can't function. So to me, that's one of the most important things we can do right now, is be in touch with our feelings.
It's always about putting that oxygen mask on first to take care of yourself. But it's just in terms of, currently I'm teaching a pod of preschool kids, and I'm amazed at how much they know about the virus. And they are, we have to wash our hands, and they don't seem scared. So the parents are doing a great job just talking about matter of fact, we have to wear masks, we have to wash our hands so that we don't get sick. And I think that's wonderful that they're doing that, but not everyone can find that balance because like we don't know what's going to happen and we don't know how long and the effects. So definitely, to be honest, I agree. I'm going to invite our featured goddesses on now to continue with this discussion. We have a number of questions that we'd like to ask you, and I'd like to start first with Alyssa.
Hi, Lisa.
Hi, Alyssa.
So like Karen, I have older children, college and sort of beyond, but and I worry how this affects them, just like moms of young kids, are worried about their own children. I guess first I would love to talk to you about like how you're talking with parents and your fellow educators about how to keep kids engaged. It just seems like hours, of looking at a screen. I know I certainly couldn't do it. How do you coach parents as well as the teachers to keep kids engaged? And I guess how would you, my part two of that is, what about kids who are a bit older even, like high schoolers, and it's hard enough sometimes to keep them focused and engaged in a classroom, but staring at a screen all day is that much harder.
Yes, okay. So for younger, this really goes for everyone. I think one of the things I noticed when I was talking with people in the spring with the parents was that they were so anxious that they weren't doing things exactly like the school does them. I was talking with a first grade mom who, she was very upset because she didn't know about the sneaky E. The sneaky E, I don't know about the sneaky, I don't know. And I said, okay, but you understand that when there's a vowel, there's an E at the end of a word, that it makes the first vowel a long vowel. You understand that. It's okay that you're not saying it the same way. So I think we have this pressure on ourselves as parents that we need to be the school teacher, when in fact, we are the first teacher of our children and we know more about, we know them intimately. So the other thing that parents were saying was that they were learning a lot about the learning style, things that they never would have known had they not been home. So I think being engaged is all about the actual learning, not so much about, we have to finish this worksheet, we have to get this work done. So when we look at things in one way of more of a task, I think that becomes a barrier actually to learning and the relationship, because it puts stress on the relationship. So I'm not saying we don't have to do the work, but what are the things we can do? For instance, asking, just being curious about it. Oh, what did you learn from that? Or I wonder why your teacher asked you that question. Or tell me the things that you already know about that. Or, finding other ways to bring that learning to life. Are you a teacher as well, Alyssa? I know some of the goddesses are teachers.
I'm not, no.
Okay, so it's just, but I think that hang up that people have, like, I'm not the teacher, I won't be, is something that we need to change. And then talking and, also just putting a schedule together and a routine, having a lot of input from the child. Older, it's interesting that you mentioned older. The older kids, people are saying that some of the most difficult time right now, the people that are having the most difficult experience, everyone's having a difficult experience in some ways. Middle school and high school children are having a very difficult time, and that is because everything about their lives is about their friends and their relationships and, creating their individual identity and moving away from their parents. And they are not in the environment where they are receiving what they need socially and emotionally from their classmates and their friends. So in the spring, we had kids at school who were extremely good students who just stopped doing their work, just didn't do it. And this is because there were a lot of feelings going on of, shock, grief, all of these things were happening. And to your point of remote learning can be very difficult, and everyone is doing their best. Teachers are doing their best. Students are doing their best. I think we need to look outside of what's the grade for this, and, should points be taken off for an assignment when there are people setting fires around us? I mean, if you think about all the things that we lived through, especially in the beginning, it's just very, very difficult. So I think we need to be flexible and just look at what's happening under the surface for the middle schoolers and the high schoolers. To me, that's really what it's about, is that if we can't regulate, our feelings, and we're in a lot of pain, it's just not possible that we'll be able to learn. So we need to address that before we can accomplish things, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see Camille tearing up. Would you like to share what you're going through?
Well, of course, you hit me right in the heart strings, because right before coming on, I have a middle schooler. So everything that you were saying hit really hard, because I was asking her, I was like, oh, by the way, I'm going to be speaking with this educator. Do you have anything that you would like to speak about being a 7th grader? And I mean, because her first year of middle school got cut in half because of COVID, right? So, and everything you said, she missed her friends. Like, she would be willing to take the risk because she missed hanging out with her friends. A lot of her friends don't have devices of their own where they can FaceTime and engage socially, like you mentioned. And that's like, there's been so much focus on getting the institutions prepared and all of that, but there hasn't been a lot of focus on how do we get our children prepared for the idea of going back to school. And like, we're both ADHD, full disclosure. So like, remembering to not hug people, to keep your mask on, like, that's a lot of steps,
It's
So
a lot.
like, I would love for her to be able to go back to school and be able to have that engagement again and socialization. But since that's not an option, I'm wondering what you're telling parents as far as how to make sure somehow we're able to bring that piece to our child. Because I have an only child too, and I'm an only child. So like, I liked being alone, so I can't relate.
Right.
So.
So more restorative for you. And so she is communicating with some of the friends through the device, but it's, are they able to go to the park, to go out for a walk? I mean, it's just, okay, no.
Yeah. Well, sadly, the friends that she's speaking with are her best friends all moved away right before middle school anyway. So it's like, oh, now I have time. We're on the same time frame since we're all home. We can communicate. And one is her cousin that is 2 hours away. So it's just luck of the draw that neither of them live nearby. But
is there family? Does she have cousins?
Nope.
No. Okay.
Nearby. It's just us.
I mean, I think just understanding what's happening and just validating her feelings. I understand that you miss your friends. This is really painful for you. This is, what are some things that you can do, even though things aren't normal right now? What are some things you can do with what you have? Can you maybe do a painting project on Zoom? Like, what are some activities that we can do? And just really, really important to just validate her feelings and know what she's going through. And, I think as parents, the ability to say, I know what you're feeling and I know what it feels like to be you in this moment is so powerful. It won't take away all the pain, but it's very comforting, and it's teaching empathy. It's a life skill. I mean, what I want to do right now is just fix it. And this is what we want to do. I want to take you and say, okay, let's find, I want to fix it. And that's what we want to do as parents. And that's why this is so difficult, because we can't fix it, and it's not easy. So the only thing we can do is, it's not the only thing, but one of the most powerful things we can do is just to be in touch with feelings. And for you to say, it's really hard for me to see this. This is really difficult for me, because I know this is what you'd like to be doing. It's easier for me to be here. I'm happy that you're with me. And, maybe just this idea of what do we have right now, and what are we grateful for? I had I have a little magnetic board. Well, it's actually really big. And I just took little pieces of paper and cut up like little pieces of computer paper. And in the spring, when we were all home together, we just at every night took a little, I passed everyone 2 or 3 little sheets of paper, and you would write, what are you grateful for today? and it might be a coffee or it might be something really small. And then I stuck those all on the board. So as you leave the household or come back in, you have to see those things. It has to be done in a way that's not saying, well, you should be grateful for these things, but just a way to notice the things that we do have, but also be aware of the challenges.
Right, a good point too, with because she had also stopped doing her schoolwork kind of as a protest of it just being too much and overwhelming. But I think a lot of parents are now becoming the guidance counselor, the teacher, the short order cook, the nurse, and so many other we're carrying so many hats that maybe we wouldn't notice that as being a sign of I'm overwhelmed. This is an emotional reason why I'm stopped doing my work, as opposed to it's too difficult or whatever. And anything you can give us as parents to recognize when this is a disciplinary thing, although positive reinforcement, or whether this is like something emotional is going on and they're withdrawing from doing their schoolwork because of it.
Right. So I would pay attention to what would be helpful in this situation. So positive discipline is all about teaching life skills and what would be helpful. So the whole idea of consequences in this situation, is that something that's helpful? Is that something that's going to help her grow? Or is that something that's going to create more anger and tension and retreat and, more this feeling of revenge? So as parents, when we're struggling, we're just trying to see, okay, what do I do to teach this life skill or to teach this thing? And often we go to that place because that's all we have and that's all we know, but there are a million encouraging tools that we can use and try that are much more helpful. So for instance, just let me give you an example. I wrote down a couple of examples. So just saying, it sounds like you might be worried that you can't see your friends for a while. I'm wondering, what are some ideas for some other things we can do? If you notice that while she's working, if she does complete a task, and this, piggybacking on what Karen was saying earlier on the positive encouragement, saying, I noticed that math lesson, that was a struggle. So it's okay for her to struggle through something. I noticed that was a struggle. That really shows perseverance. You really found a new strategy to do that. So being really specific when you do see something happening and being more of the guide rather than the sort of the enforcer of things. I think we need to do that as parents because we've never been in this situation before where we are working with school learning. So really noticing what she's capable of, which is a lot, and being more of a coach and a guide.
It's interesting because my older daughter is in grad school, but she's home. And she came downstairs one day very upset because she said she was trying to ask a question. There were, out of 20 students, 6 were remote at the time. Now they all are, but when it first started. And she said, I was trying to ask a question. I kept, raising my hand on the Zoom and saying, but I couldn't unmute. And so the professor just continued talking. And so I started to try and fix it.
Yes.
And I tried to tell her to be more bold and you have to really shout and wave. And I realized if she was away at college, a grad school student, I would not be doing that.
Would that be involved? Yeah.
No, but I feel like even with all ages, this can happen. And there's so many other factors to remote learning now that the kids have to be taught. And whether it's being seen or asking a question or participating, I too taught remote learning for 3-year-olds, when the pandemic started. And it was for a teacher, it was like putting on a show. I could see the kids losing their attention. And I'd be like, hey, with puppets and singing, I had to change my whole, just for kids to focus. So it's been very difficult for all around.
Yes, we're all, Karen, we're all learning that as
Yes,
we, again, as the teacher and the parent. And I think that's the most valuable thing we can take away from this, is that it's okay that we don't know how to do this. No one does. We are all learning as we go along.
exactly. When I went to bring my other daughter home, I saw kids wearing Zoom University sweatshirts at her college. Really, which, Camille, I think you need to get your daughter Zoom school, because that's really what it is. Joelle has a question now.
Hi, Joelle.
Hi, it's good to meet you.
You too.
So, piggybacking off of what you've been talking about with Alyssa and with Camille, I'm really thinking about piggybacking off of the piece about adolescents in particular being, one of their primary developmental tasks is separating, individuating. Who am I outside of the family system? And that, for so many kids who are 100% remote, that whole avenue is completely cut, not completely, because there's Zoom or there's FaceTime, but such an important part of that avenue of development is being physically away from family, out of the house, taking risks and exploring away from home base. So I'm really curious what your thoughts are about social regression. What this is doing developmentally, particularly to those 10, 11, 12-year-olds. My kids, again, like Alyssa and Karen, my kids are college and beyond, but I got 2 nieces and a nephew, and they're high school and junior high age. And, I think about how social they are, how much of their life is lived away from home, and how important and rich all of that is to their development. And so I'm really curious what you're seeing and what your thoughts are around that.
What I'm noticing, I notice that people have, and I'm sure you've seen this, comfort level, people have different comfort levels with gathering. Some kids are playing outside in the neighborhood, some kids are going to parks, some parents are getting together if they're getting together with the same people. So I think it's so different for everyone. It is temporary. This is temporary, and that I think we need to maintain our hope and say, this is not forever. I know this is difficult. This is not forever. So I would say, what are you comfortable with? That is something that maybe is outside of the household. If you're not, then that's okay. Then we're just going to be using the screens. The long-term effects, we don't know anything yet. There's so many, and to be honest with you, I'm glad we don't, because I think we need all the strength we can get just to get through every minute of what's happening right now. I don't know. What I'm looking at is, what are the things that they are gaining right now? What are the skills that they're learning that they maybe would not have if they were in their normal lives? So for instance, the independence of learning from home. Some kids are engaged in service projects. They're reaching out to the community. There are all these other things happening. It's such a change. What I notice for the kids who are in school is, we've said to these kids for years, share everything, be kind, we say all these things, and now we're saying, don't share, don't go near. So I think it's so, just managing all of that is so much. I've also noticed that what it takes to get through the school day mentally is exhausting, whether you're in person trying to socially distance or online. So I have noticed that some of the socialization in the adolescent ages that you mentioned, they're just tired, and maybe they don't want to do the things that they had done in the past. So I think it's all over the place. I'm just noticing what's happening and trying to learn from it. I'm not a formal researcher, but that's what I do, is just listen to what's happening. I wish I had an answer, but I don't. I just think we're managing it the best that we can right now. And if there is, a caring, strong relationship at home, that's what we have right now. And that's really powerful. I was talking to someone the other day about, as Americans, we don't typically have our children home after college, and a lot of that is happening right now. And it's really interesting to see the benefits of that. So I'm looking at, let's be real about the challenges, but also what are we learning and what are the benefits of this? And how is this going to help us going forward?
We were talking the other day about introverts and extroverts. And the extroverted child who gets attention at school from their peers, they're not going to get that necessarily on Zoom unless they're doing little things, It is funny, actually, as I'm telling you this, my sister, who's also a teacher, she said she was, teaching her class, and you can change your name. And one of the kids kept changing his name, and it was driving my sister crazy because everyone was laughing. That was his way of, getting attention.
Yes, exactly.
Right. So they will find ways, I guess, as I talk about it. But just the introvert, who doesn't want to be looked at, because on Zoom, you can, focus in on a person. It's just personalities really have to be shifted during this time. And
right.
I hear you too about the benefits with my two daughters at home. One is milking it and loving it and sitting with us at dinners and going for walks and really enjoying it, while the other is like, get me out of here. So I see both sides.
Is the one that's saying get me out of here, is she the one that just came back? Was she away and then?
No, she's the one at grad school. And I don't blame her. She's 23. She wants to move on out. And so we have to figure that out about her possibly going back there. There's lots of factors, but it's very hard to do that with her age. It could be because she's older. Alyssa, you have some questions now to ask Lisa.
Yeah. So we talked a lot just now about the social and emotional well-being of kids and introverts and extroverts, but I wanted to kind of get into the academics a little bit more. And that is, it seems to me that there are kids who, in a live classroom setting, would feel totally free raising their hand, asking a question, saying I'm confused. But, on a Zoom setting, those very same kids may be reluctant to do so. And I have some friends with middle schoolers, in fact, one I was just talking to yesterday, who said, my son doesn't really want to ask during Zoom. I mean, I think it takes that much more to put yourself out there and say, I don't get it, I don't understand, or whatever. If you're sitting in a classroom, you can look to your neighbor, and if they look confused, right, then you're like, okay, maybe I'm not, dumb, or, whatever you might think as a middle schooler. Like, you think like, okay, we're all confused and I'm just going to raise my hand. So I feel like there's this risk that kids really can fall behind. And I worry sometimes that in a Zoom setting, a teacher wouldn't necessarily know that. In a live setting, you can look to a kid and say like, oh, I'm not sure my message or what I'm teaching is coming across loud and clear. So I worry about kids, and I would love to get your thoughts on how teachers can, and they're working so hard now, and it's hard to sort of ask that much more of them, but how can you really tap into each kid individually under the current circumstances and really make sure that they're moving at the pace that they should be? And, and then there are all these kids who have learning differences and have all these extra resources that are available to them in a live in-school setting. And how are those kids getting that extra help? So any thoughts on that to sort of allay all of the parents' fears that their kids are kind of keeping up and where they're supposed to be?
No, I think there are ways in which teachers can. So to me, it's all about connecting the community. So we can do a quick share. If I'm a teacher, I can do a quick share around. It's different. It's, typically we would be sitting in a circle. Okay, So what's your feel, how are you feeling about how school's going so far? One word answer. So there are ways to do these little check-ins, social emotionally, which set that connection. And like you're saying, because especially at that age, they are nervous about what are other people. I mean, I don't like speaking up on Zoom. Sometimes I get on a meeting and it's so awkward. You don't know, are people, it's just so different. So I think that's just the nature of what's happening right now. I would not hesitate to just check in with the teacher and just say, what are you noticing? What are you seeing? Like, this is what I'm seeing at home. Because I think sometimes as parents, especially right now, I mean, I do this, I worry about something that maybe that's happening and maybe it isn't happening. So you could ask the teacher, or you could just, check in with the child. So what are you learning? How are things going? Tell me about what you learned in math today. Do you feel comfortable, just asking those questions and maybe problem solving together? So when there's something you want to say and you don't feel like you're getting called on, are you allowed to use the chat? Like, is that, like, what are you, so you're trying to build these skills together and problem solve together. So what are your ideas on some other ways that you might be able to communicate? Or I understand you might be nervous about it. What are some other ways you can show you understand? Or maybe it's just writing yourself a note in your journal. So I just think we have to, again, look at the learning, look outside of what's happening on the screen, because I agree with you, it's more confining to me being on, you actually have to sit and look forward the entire time. And even if you're in a room, you can move a little bit, shift in your chair. So it's very confining. So again, this is not forever. It feels like it is right now and we're in it. I think we just need to get through it and cope with it the best that we can. And in the long run, my belief is that if we keep working on these social emotional skills, kids will have what they need to catch up on the academics. And I think everyone is in the same boat right now. Maybe we need to rewrite some of the curriculum next year. I'm not seeing that happen. I'm seeing kids learning remotely and in person, even with all these obstacles in place. It's incredible to me how resilient they are and that they are actually still learning. I'm astounded, and that's what I'm paying attention to. They're wearing their masks all day. Like Karen and I were talking, they're wearing their masks all day. They're wearing their masks. It's hard for the adults with the masks and the screens. So I think we can learn a lot from what they are doing, as opposed to maybe just being overcome by our worry.
Yeah. It is true. Yeah. They're taking on new skills like resilience. Yeah. I think also grief.
Oh, grief. Have you heard it? Have you read about David Kessler? So David Kessler, he's a grief therapist, and he has a lot of writing that he's done recently, a lot of always on grief, but he's talked about the coronavirus, and I can share some resources with you that what we are experiencing right now in this world is collective grief. We've never had this experience before. We are all grieving the loss of normal life, the loss of birthdays, graduations, all of those things. And what he says is that we are experiencing the stages of grief, sometimes all in one day. Denial, this virus isn't going to affect me, or bargaining. If I stay home for a week, maybe. So all of these, we're working through this grief, not in a linear way. And just his whole point is that we're all in different places and we don't know where the other person is at any given time. And they may be acting that out in their behavior.
I see that with one of my daughters. I see that she kind of went through and then is accepting. This is just what it is. It's a new normal for me. And in a way, there'll be some advantages in a sense, like her graduation. I think I was telling Alyssa about it, like that from high school was not the big grand graduation. It was the school managed to make it very special and individualized for each student, which in a way was kind of good for us. We didn't have to find parking and stand in line and all that stuff. but it was like a whole different way. Camille, would you like to add? I know you have a lot of questions.
Yeah, I guess kind of going back with what Alyssa was saying, because kids do have ADHD, 504 plans, IEPs, and I don't think a lot of the schools have really worked that into the education, especially remotely. I know I haven't seen anything that really helps in that, because, and I don't know if you have suggestions on how parents can really advocate for their child, because it's beyond just something they can do for themselves sometimes when there's that limitations with learning disabilities, or even with kids that may have even emotional issues going on with grief and so on. Because like we've had within our own family 3 family members that have passed during this time, and it's been difficult, maybe not so much directly, just being around all of that, hearing all of that, knowing that as well. So it's a lot to carry in 1 year.
It's a lot to carry. And when you are in the state of, you know, that part of your brain so your frontal lobe is the part of your brain that is, you know, problem solving and planning and doing all of that work. And the part of your brain that's in charge of keeping you safe or wondering if you're safe, which is the amygdala, is activated right now. So if we're walking around thinking, you know, am I always in this survival mode? Am I safe? We can't, and I'm sure you've had the experience, I know that I have, of just like blurry. It is, you know, and knowing in your family that someone has passed away from, it's that fear is sometimes paralyzing. It's hard, it's just a distraction to doing the other things. So I've learned that every school and every district, they're doing what they can. I was talking with some parents who have a young son in CPS, and the mom, I mean, she was so overwhelmed. She said the teacher was spending some one-on-one time with the child, and then would have time to check in with her. But it isn't the same as being in school. So to your point, I think they're doing the best that they can, but it just isn't the same. I do think that a lot of these skills that we're focusing on being home do also help with ADHD. For instance, let's do one thing at a time. This is not a time to multitask. This is a time to set our routine for the day. You know, tell me what you need to do between 9 and 10. So have a little check-in time as a family. Or I, the mom, need to be on a meeting from 10 to 11. What will you be doing during that time? You know, what will you do to learn during that time? So there are things that we can put in place that do naturally help with those challenges. I know it's just, it's so difficult because it's not the same. And I will say that even being it's not the same whether you're remote or in person, because you have all of these things in the way. So I don't know which is better. It's all challenging.
I am thinking a lot about parents who have kids who are doing remote learning, and the parents are maybe working night shifts or just completely up to here with all of the things that they are doing to adapt and to, just keep life going. And their resources are at rock bottom as far as patience, time, capacity for doing all the things that you're describing to support a kid who is trying to adapt to challenges of remote or hybrid learning, and thinking about how to support those parents who are feeling really spent so that they can then come back to their kids with something.
Okay, yes. So this is actually, Joelle, what we should have talked about first. This is what I should have said first, is that we as the adults need to take care of ourselves. And when I say that to people, they sort of shake their head like, what are you, that's not possible right now because we don't have time for that. And I almost feel like I can't say that anymore. Like this idea of self-care, they're kind of scoffing at or laughing at self-care because there is not the time for it. So I did some more reading about burnout, and Karen mentioned the oxygen mask. Mm-hmm. We know that metaphor has been around forever because it's so clear, but it's still difficult for us, I think, as parents to actually take the time to take care of ourselves first. So what I like to do is ask people, when do you know that you need self-care? What are the moments when you notice that you need it? If you're exhausted, or if you are flipping your lid or blowing your top, what is it that you need to do before you get to that place? So instead of, let's say, to me, self-care is not going to get a massage every day, because people say, well, then I'm still worried about everything that's happening. So when you feel yourself climbing, escalating, or getting to a place where you're going to flip your lid, that's where I think we need to think about, how can I shift and how can I take care of myself? Maybe it's a 5-minute walk. Maybe it's whatever it is. It can be something very small. I think the best thing we can teach our kids right now is we are resilient because we find a way not to burn out. And that is really difficult to do. My daughter used to say to me, Mom, you're so tired all the time, but you don't do anything to change it. That's pretty clear. I can learn from that. So I think everyone needs to find their own way of doing that, and what it is that brings them peace, even if it's for 3 minutes or 2 minutes, getting more sleep. The other thing is asking the children to help and contribute more to the household. I think we do way too much, and we think we have to, and they want to help because they know that we're stressed. So would you mind, unloading the dishwasher, or what's something that you can do this week? How can you help? These are all the things that need to be done. What can you do to help? And just inviting them to do things.
I think that point that you're making is so important, because I know in my own life that I'll be at the end of my rope and see 7 things to do, and I want it done right, I'll do it myself. And that just makes the candle burn down faster and depletes me more. So inviting others in is an okay thing to do. And also I think as parents, it feels kind of dissonant to say, I'm going to make a choice to prioritize myself rather than putting everybody, the good of the family, the good of the children, everybody else ahead. But yeah, it's not sustainable.
No. And this idea of I should, so then I would ask you, what's in I remember my mom saying, you're so tired all the time. You're so tired all the time. Well, that's not helpful, because that's not helpful. That's almost making me feel more guilty. So this idea of, did anyone ever say you should be the person who does no one ever said that, but it's something that we're taking on ourselves. I should have this perfect, and I'm the same way. It's been very difficult for me to ask for help, and it's so liberating, and I think such a gift to other people, because it's difficult for them to see us in distress, and we are, if we're managing all of that. I mean, we have more on our plate than we ever did before, mm-hmm. Especially people with young children at home. And if they're older or away, we're still worrying about them.
And there's a fine line. I know I keep bringing back to my daughters and they're going to kill me, but between living in our home, when they should be respectful of that and, follow along with the cleaning and the help with the cooking and grocery, which they would be doing totally on their own. So I struggle sometimes with what Joelle was saying, I'll just do it. So if I see clothes on the floor, or, and then also between shutting the door and just letting them have their room however they want it, disgusting or not.
Yes. So, I mean, I notice when I do that, when I come to the point of resentment, I can feel the resentment building. I try not to get there. It's taken years. I mean, it's almost a gift to have this child back, because now I can practice some of these things that I haven't done in the past, right? Would you mind going to the grocery store? These are the things we need. And it's so true. And I do the same thing. I close the door, but it's hard to walk past the door. I know, but you have to, because you can't manage that. And it's not even respectful because they're 22. It's just so
and if they lived in their own home, or, you know, their own dorm. I know Alyssa, her boys are out now, so she doesn't have to go through that, live with that. But I know when your boys were home, you did. So how did you handle it, Alyssa? I never asked you.
You know, I didn't adapt to being an empty nester so quickly. So for me, it was a gift to get them back much sooner than I had expected. One was graduating college, but didn't have as nice a graduation, I think, Karen, as your daughter did. That was so personal, intimate. My son's college graduation was the graduation that wasn't. So it was just kind of a loss there. And my other son, you know, came back from college, was supposed to come back for the summer, wound up coming back a few months earlier. So it was nice for me to have them back and have my nest full again. But I totally recognized that there was this feeling that, as good as it was for me, it wasn't so fabulous for them. You know, they were missing out, they were losing out on things. And, you know, so I really tried to, as Karen was alluding to, sort of walk this fine line between, yes, you're in the home and we're going to all contribute to, you know, chores and just things that needed to get done, and being respectful of the fact that you're home here and keeping your rooms relatively clean. And also sort of recognizing, like, you know, they weren't really supposed to be here at that time. So, you know, letting them kind of be as independent as we could under the circumstances. But it was also a time when nobody was really going anywhere and doing anything. So as much as they wanted to sort of get out and be with their friends and be social, everyone was sort of stuck under the same roof. So it was a challenge, I think, more for them than it was for me. I was just sort of happy to have them here. And now
don't get me wrong. I'm thrilled to have them here. I don't know if they are, but yeah.
Well, Alyssa, can I ask you a question? When they went back after being home, what happened when they went back? Like, did you notice anything about, what was that transition like after being home for that many months?
For me or for them?
For them and for you.
Well, one of them, just he's here until he moved out and now works and is sort of living a very independent adult life, though fortunately for me, fairly close by. And the other one went back to college. And I think for both of them, there was a sense of like relief to get back to some sense of normalcy, to be back with, you know, for my college son to be back with his friends. And as much as things were very different, you know, college today doesn't look like it did a year ago. But a sense of relief for really more of the social aspects. And, you know, though he's still kind of doing everything academically, 99% of it on Zoom, that hasn't really changed. Just he's doing it in a different location. But I think socially it's been great for him. And for me, there is a sense of stress. You know, you're always, as you said, when your kids get older, you don't stop worrying about them. I don't care how old they are, right? But in addition to just always making sure what we had last year was, you know, just their well-being. Are they safe? Are they, you know, doing well, eating, sleeping, being healthy? Now it's what's going on in this pandemic, and, you know, where my son is, the numbers are very high. In fact, here in Chicago, the numbers are extremely high. And just kind of worrying, you know, is he being safe in that regard? So that there's all this other stress that, you know, and is he kind of thinking college is a big bummer, or is college, you know, kind of as good as it can be? So, and the sense of loss that I have for my son, who doesn't have the same college experience as my older son, who sort of got out by the skin of his teeth and some sort of like normal college experience. So, you know, one more thing for us parents to stress about.
No, I just get the goosebumps even, I know, just listening to you. I know.
one of the things I noticed, I was kind of relieved in some ways, a lot like with Alyssa saying having them home. Like I didn't have to worry about bullying. I didn't have to worry about her having to go through all of the racial tension that was going on. I didn't have to worry about her going through that at school. Like it was at home. I could control it more, what she was exposed to in a way. But at the same time, it's like, how's that transition going to change once we go back to school again, and alleviating those fears of that tension being there as well still again, maybe, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I guess.
Can I just say one thing about that, Camille?
Mm-hmm.
Because this is something that happened that I experienced. And this was in the notes of someone's question. All the focus that has been on the buildings and the plexiglass and all of that, it was so overwhelming for people who were going back in person, for the administrators and the teachers and for everyone. And what I was worried about separation, I was worried, okay, these children have been home for however long, 6 months, and now they're coming to school. We're going to have so many separation issues. Teachers were worried they weren't going to wear their masks. And it astounded me. Those kids were running into school. They were so happy to be back and to see their friends, even if they had to wear masks. So I think I'm taking their cues and I'm trying to learn a lot from them. There is so much good to go back to. And even though it's not the same, they have this way of seeing it that sometimes I think is more hopeful than the way we see it, because we have this worry. So sometimes we think those things and then that's not actually what happens. So we tend to worry in advance also as parents, right? Yes.
But preparation for the worst, expecting
preparation for the worst. Yeah.
Thank you.
I want to ask you, Lisa, how our viewers and listeners, if they would like to contact you, if that's possible, how can they do that?
Sure. So I do have a website. It's called Lisa Herold Consulting. It's Herold. And then my email is lisa@lisaheroldconsulting.com. So Herold is the spelling.
Will you be giving workshops online to parents or just to your school?
No, I do offer parent workshops online. Again, I've noticed that sometimes, well, honestly, I haven't offered a lot that are virtual. I think I should do more of that online. And sometimes, yes, I think it's needed. And maybe just like an hour lunch and learn, things like that. So we can offer more things. Yes.
Well, maybe this will inspire you to do it.
It will inspire me, definitely. I'm seeing all of everything that's happening.
Which, by the way, I want to thank my featured goddesses for being so vulnerable, especially you, Camille, because it's a really challenging time for all of us. And to ask these questions, we want all the answers, like you said, Lisa, we want to fix it. But I think what I'm getting out of this mainly is the takeaway of being a goddess of hope.
Yes.
And resilience.
Yes. And not faking it, right? Yes.
So if you were to end, if we were to end now, do you have 3 keywords of advice that you could maybe share with our viewers and listeners?
Well, since you mentioned hope, I'll add another one. My words are grace, have grace with yourself and others, relationship, and life skills. This is a long range project, parenting. And so let's just keep looking ahead.
And close that bedroom door.
And close that bedroom door. You will get through it.
We will
not forever.
Through it. We can do it.
We can do it.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses.
Thank you, Karen, and thanks, Goddesses.
Up next, favorite things. Opening up to happiness and joy.
So, Goddesses, welcome to Favorite Things. I know times have been really stressful and hard, and it's kind of hard to think about something that brings you happiness right now, but we have to do that. We have to be hopeful, because if we're not, where is it going to get us, right? It doesn't serve us to not be. So if you can focus on something that brings you joy, even if it's the smallest little thing, it's important to do that. So we're going to start with Joelle. What did you bring along for your favorite happiness thing today?
My favorite happiness thing today is this new candle that I just got in the mail. I have created this ritual where when I sit down in front of the computer to work, I need to have a candle lit. I don't know why. Sometimes I get like sick from the smell of it, from sitting for hours and smelling the scented candle over and over. But there's just something that's really calming about being able to look away from my screen momentarily and just see this flame flickering, and it's very grounding for me. So I got this new musk scented soy candle, and I hope I don't get sick of it because it smells so good. So I'm really looking forward to firing it up this week and just being bathed in something really grounding and calming while I work in front of the computer.
We talk a lot, Lisa, about smells, about different lotions and creams and smells. And it's funny, Joelle, you say that, because I came across the other day scented candles that were scents of whiskey and Cabernet. And I was like, I need one of those.
Yeah, I take one of those.
Because, you know, you have too much to drink and you're like, just light the candle instead. I'll send you one.
Wow.
Alyssa, what did you bring?
Okay, so, you know, I know we try very hard on this show, sometimes with great difficulty, to not get political, but we are taping this episode on November 8th. So to hell with that. I'm throwing caution to the wind. And right now, my favorite thing is just sort of the sense of joy that we are seeing around at least half of the people who live in this country. But my favorite thing is our new Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. She, to me, has been just incredibly inspiring, not only because she's, believe it or not, in 2020, only the fourth woman to make it onto a major party presidential ticket, which still seems astounding, and the first to actually find herself in the White House. But she is inspiring to me, and she said some things last night that I thought were really incredible. And while we're talking about children, I'm going to read this quote because this is truly what's bringing me joy and happiness right now. She said, "While I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last, because every little girl watching tonight sees that this is a country of possibilities. And to the children of our country, regardless of your gender, our country has sent you a clear message. Dream with ambition, lead with conviction, and see yourself in a way that others might not see you simply because they've never seen it before. And we will applaud you every step of the way," she said. So that's what's giving me joy and happiness today. And she, therefore, is my favorite thing.
Well, she is an incredible role model. And when we talk about remote learning as educators, and now Jill Biden, incredible role models to our children, and as teachers, as parents, and Kamala, just to be that positive, you know, role model is so important. I too am so pleased at that as well. Not to get political, because I respect everyone's opinion of what they choose.
Well, I can't imagine that education is not going to be one of Dr. Jill Biden's, you know, initiatives. I just couldn't possibly.
Yes. And maybe helping with remote learning. Maybe, Lisa, you can reach out to her.
Oh, yes.
You never know. She could be listening. Jill, if you're listening, come join us on the Goddesses. Camille, what would you like to say? And Kamala, too.
Right. Dreams. So I felt really bad knowing that Alyssa would always bring on these wonderful skincare products. And I used to be an esthetician. Like, I should be bringing on my secret weapons that I use as my fantastic gifts. Sorry, as my favorite thing. So I brought my eye kit, which is starting to vibrate without me pushing anything. So I guess even it wants to come out. But so anytime I cry, my eyes swell. And so I have to, like, this has been my little thing. I do lymphatic drainage with it, and it vibrates, and it makes all the eye creams go in even deeper. And then, of course, I have the face ones. I can do all of that too. And then at night or midday naps, if you're able to have it. So just like a 5-second something. I have that eye pillow as well. That's like satin that my mom made for me. And it's my little eye kit because allergies as well. My eyes will swell up. So this is my secret weapons for those late nights when we were all doom scrolling, which will now be over, hopefully. This has kept the eye puffs and dark circles away.
The first two, what are they called? So
this is Ionics. I actually brought the box up so you could see. It's Ionics by Nurse Jamie. My best friend sent this to me, Jeremy. And then this is the Triangle Facial Beauty Tool. I'm sure there's several different options out there.
That looks like a gua sha.
It is, but it's vibrating and there's different options. You can have it normal or heated. So like,
oh, cool. Beautiful. Well, you have beautiful, radiant skin.
Thank you.
You do have beautiful
the
skin.
45th birthday is coming up. So it's like all the anti-aging I can possibly slather on. I'm doing it.
Thank you for sharing that. My favorite thing is still happening in my family. And now that my daughters are home, we're relaunching it, I guess you could say, or bringing it back to the Pulver household. When the kids were little at dinner, we would say, what are your highs and your lows? We'd go around the table. And some people say like your roses and your thorns or different things. And sometimes you could say pass if you really didn't feel like talking, but they always seem to say something positive and a lot of negative. And we would always try and say, well, let's try some more positive. Let's try some more highs. But now that my girls are home, we're doing it again. And it's really interesting, just to see what they're saying and how it's changed over the years. But it's been great because sometimes you even just say, I had a great walk today with you, or I had a great cup of coffee, like something small like that. It's still just something to be grateful for. And it helps you to have a brighter day, to reflect back on your day and to look forward to tomorrow. And then when there's a low, to listen to each other and to feel like, oh yeah, that did suck, to validate, like you said, Lisa, that was, a low could be something small, like, my charger wasn't in the room and it really threw me off, or I didn't have a good cup of coffee, or something really big, like I bombed on a test, but just to support each other. And I totally encourage those people out there, our listeners and viewers, to try that with your spouse or with your children. Lisa, what did you bring along today?
So I brought this little book. It's called The Daily Mood. And I have a little story about it. So I gave this to all of my children for Christmas last year and they left it at home. None of them wanted to take it. So when the pandemic happened and when they went back, I tried again. And I just said, it's very important for us to have, you may not have a daily mood. Your mood may change every 5 minutes or every hour. So I was able to take one, my son, the one that's in Washington State, I sent one to him. And I said, one day I just said to him, what's on your flip chart today? And he sent me a picture of, it was something positive. And of course I was thinking, oh, it must be something, he must be stressed or something. And it wasn't. It was something like rocket. It said rocket. And then he asked me, what's on yours, Mom? And I thought that was interesting because I hadn't checked in on mine that day. So I said, well, I should get one of those in the drawer out for myself. So just a little reminder that everyone has all these things that they go through. I just think it's cute.
So do you turn to it to describe your mood?
Yes,
or you just flip it each day?
You can leave it. So for instance, this one says peckish. I don't even know what peckish is. It says somewhat hungry. You could say he was peckish. He ate part of my sweater. So then it has it's just a cute little fun way.
Is hangry in there? Hangry?
Yeah, it sounds like it should be. Wonky. There's a lot of them.
That's so cool. Where can people get that? Maybe online.
Target, online.
Yeah, that's so cute.
I think you can get them almost any place now. Bookstores.
And I love your gratitude wall. Here on Grateful Goddesses, we have a gratitude jar that we fill up.
Beautiful.
on GGTV, people tell me what they're grateful for. And I think I'll end today by reaching in and seeing what someone is grateful for. Oh, this one says, I don't know who, these are from the people who were on the show, the listeners, the viewers. Someone is grateful for learning from their sickness. So that's quite interesting. I think I'll do one more. It's kind of fun to look. Someone who's grateful for thunderstorms. You know, it's so interesting to see what people are grateful for. Some people don't like thunderstorms, yet some people are grateful. So it's a good reminder to flip and change and look into our moods and be hopeful. Thank you so much again, Lisa, for joining us on Favorite Things for Grateful Goddesses. And everyone have a great, hopeful, resilient day.
Thank you.
Unleashed your inner goddess yet? Thanks for joining us today on Grateful Goddesses. We invite you to visit our website, www.gratefulgoddesses.com, to access today's show notes as well as other helpful resources. Don't forget to leave a review. Until next time, stay strong and empowered to be a grateful goddess.